Good morning. We are looking today at chapter 18. I hope you'll take the time to read the whole chapter. I haven't got time to read it all, but basically this marks the end of Absalom's rebellion. Absalom musters all his men, crosses the Jordan to confront David, and David musters all his men and sets them under 3 commanders. He wants to lead his own men against Absalom, but he doesn't. He's persuaded to stay safe inside the city where they are, and to let the men go and fight, because as they said, the important person here is the figurehead, and if he were taken by the enemy, the battle would be lost. Nobody would chase any of them. They would all only want to capture the king. And so David stays protected, and his 3 men chase after Absalom's men, and they rout them completely. There's a huge victory, and some 20,000 men of the people of Israel, the men of Israel, the ones who supported Absalom, die that day on the battlefield, trying to take the kingdom fully from David. It's a very sad day, and David has told them all, expressly told them all, not to harm Absalom. Now, his love for Absalom was huge, was enormous. It was damaging to his kingship, actually. If Absalom had survived this, I don't know what would have happened. But Joab, the great military leader, takes the situation in his own hands. Nobody else will touch Absalom. Absalom, in his vanity and everything, with his long hair flowing, has got tangled in a tree and is hanging from the tree. And nobody wants to touch him because he's the king's son, and the king has said not to harm him. But Joab knows that no good will come of returning Absalom to Jerusalem with them, even in prison, if the king did such a thing. And he kills him while he's hanging in the oak tree. I think he kills him, but anyway, then the armor bearers of Joab finish the job, and they bury him. They bury him in a great pit in the forest, and raise over him a great heap of stones, and everyone went home. They all fled home, terrified of the wrath of the king. Everybody knew how special Absalom was to his father, and it was that very favoritism that had been the root problem for Absalom. He was not properly disciplined as a child and as a young man, and he wasn't properly disciplined when he murdered his brother. David had made a lot of mistakes in the raising of his children. There's a lot of advice in the scriptures about raising children, about not sparing the rod and spoiling the child. I know our modern culture says that we shouldn't touch our children physically, but the scripture does not agree with that point of view, and I don't agree with that point of view. And I will confess openly to you that when my children were small, I had a wooden spoon, and it made contact with their buttocks once, and I never had to do it again. After that, all I had to do was threaten with the wooden spoon. It was enough, and their discipline was in hand. It is important to discipline a child. It is important that a child knows the difference between right and wrong for their own safety. And children thrive much better when they know what their boundaries are, and what their limitations are, when they're absolutely free to do whatever they want to do. It's not good for them, and the Scripture's very clear about that. And the Scripture's also very clear that it is the responsibility of the family to teach a child the faith of God and of Jesus. It's not. The responsibility does not lie in the hands of the church or the Sunday school teachers or even the teachers at school. The responsibility for teaching children how to live a godly life is the responsibility of parents. And our culture has shied away from it. Our culture has taught people that children should be told enough about every faith so they can make a realistic decision when they're old enough. That's not the Bible view. The Bible view is that we should train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. It's our responsibility to teach children from a very young age, and children at a young age can know Jesus for themselves. As we set an example for them, we teach them to pray, we teach them to read the Word, we teach them to consult the Lord on every aspect of life, to live for Him. Sooner or later, the challenge will come to them on a personal level to give their lives to Jesus. You may not agree with me. You probably won't. A lot of people don't. But it's much better to stay with the Bible that doesn't change than to stick with culture and common usage, which does change. With new scientists and new research into children, they change their view about a lot of things. Anyway, Absalom has died, and the end of the chapter gives us a long passage about how they struggled to bring the news to the king. Who was going to tell him? How were they going to tell him? Who dared to go and tell him? And in fact, the first person who comes to him, who is Ahimaaz, tells him the battle is won, but he doesn't tell him what's happened to Absalom. He makes out that he didn't see what happened to Absalom. And then the second person who comes is a Cushite, and he comes and he tells the king. He says it in roundabout words, as we often do about death. May the enemies of the Lord my king and all who rise up against you for evil be like that young man. And the king knows Absalom is dead, and he goes into his inner room and wails and weeps, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." His cry, his heart cry for his son, who he loved so very, very much, is painful to read. And it's one of the lowest moments of David's life. And we think that God doesn't understand about bereavement and about loss. He does. He understands about loss. And even this is, to me, a mirror of the great loss God experienced when Jesus died for us on the cross. When he saw his own son suffer and die, be rejected in so many ways. The pain the father felt is mirrored here in David's pain. However good or bad his son was, David's pain was excruciating when Absalom died. Oh, it's sombre this morning, isn't it? But we will lift our heads up shortly as we go into the next few chapters. Read the chapter on, if you will, and we'll meet again tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.